everyone. It is I blocked my calendar. It's the 11th. It is December 11th. It is Thursday. Forgive me. It's been a day. It's been a week. It's been a lot. But we're here on the Her Hoop Stats podcast. I'm Jamie Steyer Johnson alongside Brittany Carper. And Brittany, I think we're going to kind of run back some of what you have already discussed earlier in the week, which is one of the best, I think, most entertaining games we've seen this season. We will both just out of necessity do our cursory acknowledgement up front of, yes, we have some ties here in the Cyhawk game. Obviously, I do radio for Iowa State. I have a mom on staff. Brittany, got a brother on staff. So yes, we have connections to Iowa State, but I don't think that it takes that to say that that was a very fun, very entertaining, and just extremely high-level basketball game.
Yeah, I don't think it mattered what side of that rivalry you were on last night. If you appreciate a great women's college basketball game, I hope everyone got to tune into that. It was part of the Jimmy V week, which was also super cool because you get to, spread more cancer awareness and just the backstory of Jimmy V and all that. And then over 14,000 fans packed Hilton Coliseum. Many, many more national eyes with ESPN broadcasting that. And so I think no matter, where your loyalty lied last night, you just enjoyed a really high level basketball game. And for us, obviously, we were excited about that outcome. Two undefeated teams, Iowa State out on top. But I think it was just what we expected, really, when you had those two teams that have really, from a national perspective, garnered so much attention over the last, 4 or 5 years. You had the Caitlin Clark era of Iowa, and then, you'd have to be under a rock if you haven't been following Audie Crooks and Addie Brown and cast of Iowa State since their freshman season.
Yeah, I mean, it was really exciting it's always fun in those big environments. And what I always love is seeing the development for players within a program to start to really understand the rivalry. Like this, I think this is maybe one of the most repeated now, like minor anecdotes in this entire coverage, but like Addie Brown telling Tommy Birch, I have an Iowa driver's license now, so I get it. Like that killed me. I loved it. And but that really is kind of the key is you do have a lot of players that are from the state of Iowa. You have Audie Crooks, you have Ariana Jackson that are from Iowa, and then you have players that come in and really start to understand it. Like you have Addie Brown who now gets it. You have Jada Williams who certainly came in having an idea and now really, really gets it. She's someone who's ready to live up to a big opportunity. And then over on the Iowa side, I mean, you have players who have been around for a lot of years of these rivalries. And, specifically Hannah Stokey just as kind of that senior leader on the team, as kind of the one setting the pace. And then they've brought in such great pieces. Ava Hyden in her second year has been tremendous. Having Chessie Wright, Chit Chat Wright back in this game was absolutely crucial for them. And we'll get into all those specifics. But I think just to see the continued awareness on a national scale of what an unbelievable game this is, what a fun rivalry it is, and just how great the environment is, and then to have it just live up to the billing in a huge way. It's always really satisfying to come away with the win when it's on your preferred rooting interest side, but it's like a double win to have a really good game and also a great measuring stick for where these two programs are at. Like, I think that neither team goes away thinking, well, we played a flawless game. Neither team goes away thinking, man, we were screwed out of this one. Like it was a well-played game. Iowa State came out on top, but I think that it's really important to be able to get those opportunities to develop more and find things to improve upon. And obviously in a loss, you're going to find those for Iowa, but for Iowa State, they allowed a pretty big comeback from the Hawkeyes in the fourth quarter. And so there's a lot to take away from that as well. So let's start kind of on the Iowa side here. What did you see that you liked? What did you see that you are looking for, maybe further development going forward?
You mentioned it. I think the addition of Chit Chat Right has been so underrated for this Hawkeye team. She is a transfer sophomore. Came in and really, what didn't have a like freshman season where you were like eye popping numbers but she's really came into this Iowa team and I just really love what she does on the court. Not only is it her scoring ability, but she's just aggressive. They seem to play at a better pace when she's in the basketball game, and so I really liked her. And I know it was a tough night for sophomore Ava Hayden. She was held 8 points under her season average. But I really think like what she's going to do over her Iowa career will be really special. I think she has the tools. She's a little bit more versatile than I think what you expect from an Iowa big in terms
And
of
especially her height. Like she's not the size that like, oh, you
yep,
have to be able to stretch out the floor, but she can stretch to the mid range already. I would be shocked
yeah.
if she's not shooting threes next year.
Absolutely, and just her ability, I think, to put the ball on the floor too, like and finish at the rim, and so I thought that was super impressive. And then I think from a Hannah Stolke perspective, is someone where you've kind of watched her throughout her career, and we were kind of talking about this before we hopped on, but I think when you played alongside an elite passer in Caitlin Clark, a lot of what you did at the rim or your scoring ability came pretty easy because of that. And so now I think she's in this senior season where the production expected out of her is supposed to be a little bit more. And so just in terms of finding the right spots for her, I thought in that fourth quarter when she catches kind of in that mid-range and attacks off the bounce seems to be a little bit more of a successful recipe for her. And so I think going forward, like if you're Iowa, you're really looking into that in terms of how can we continue to get production out of her. But the number one thing they're going to go back to is obviously foul trouble, but you're also not going to be playing an elite post player like Audie Crooks every single game. But I think that's something that if you're the Hawkeyes, like how do we, if we do match up, because I mean, they are in the same conference as UCLA and Lauren Betts. And what does that look like the next time we face an elite post player?
And that's something that we've talked about on the Her Hoop Stats podcast last year on the press break ad nauseum is you can't crash out about a single loss. Like that was, I think, the title of an episode last year. And like great teams don't crash out over a loss. Like
Yeah.
that is such a gift to be able to say, man, we played a pretty solid game in some ways, but there's some ways we have to be a lot better. And to get that opportunity to develop that part of your game in season. And I mean, here's the thing is that in non-conference, in rivalry games, like every game, every win is important, but there's more at stake in conference play. Like that
Yep.
you don't have a non-conference champion. That's the postseason.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a whole conference season before you get to that point. And so I think that to go up against a player like Audie Crooks, who is bar none one of the top post players in the country and one of the most difficult to defend and makes Iowa State one of the most difficult teams to defend. There's very few things that can prepare you better for going up against a player like Lauren Betts. And so I think that that's something that will certainly be looked at closely. I think part of it too is that Audie didn't draw every foul in the game. Addie Brown drew 7 fouls and Audie drew 7. And so
Yep.
I think that part of it too is recognizing that we'll get to this in a second. Addie Brown deserves a lot more credit for what she does on the floor, but also to understand that, okay, you want to say whatever you want to say about how rare it is to go up against a player like Audie Crooks, about how tough she is to defend. All right. well, then that means that you have to be that much better in the other situations that many people say are easier defensive matchups. I would maybe not agree with that, but
Right.
if that is the belief, and it's at least a more straightforward player archetype for Addie Brown. She's tough to defend, but at least you're more likely to have someone that can kind of physically match up with her. And so
Mhm.
you have to be just a little bit sharper there. And the thing is for Iowa, like I have a lot of confidence that they will figure some of that stuff out. Like, this is still a young team. This is a team that is still getting healthy. This was Chit Chat's first full game back since getting injured. This is, again, game 10 of Ava Hyden's sophomore year where she's stepping into a completely different role. They've had some injuries down their bench. And so I think that I'm very interested to see how they do in Big Ten play. I think that their ranking was well deserved. They should not drop far, but they certainly they were ready for the challenge, and I think that there's going to be some good things, some very positive things to take away from it, and then some really important things that they can develop, and I think will develop.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing is if you're that Hawkeye team, and Jan Jensen kind of talked about it in the post game, but like you came back from 17 down
Mhm.
on the road in an environment that is very loud. You have the home team, and no one's on your side necessarily in those situations. And they had it down to a one possession game with a chance to tie. And so those are things that, like, as a team is growing and progressing in the non-conference, you look back on and you take away a lot, I think, a lot more positives than negatives from that game. But like you said, they have some health. They have to get, they have to get some kids healthy and continue to grow and progress. But I don't think if you're Iowa, you're hanging your heads after that loss. I think it was two really great teams that went at it, and you're just going to take what you can learn, and then you're going to prepare for your next game. And I think that was the biggest takeaway from me, is that they didn't walk away hanging their heads. I think they understood that was a great basketball game. We just came up a little bit short.
And we'll talk about their next game, next couple games here in a few minutes. But first, let's kind of shift gears, staying within this Cyhawk matchup. Obviously, we will talk some Cyclones here. First, I kind of want to set the table as well, where I there was, I think, some narratives of, well, Iowa's not healthy, and Iowa State, they're coming in full power.
Not true.
Reese Bay
Yeah.
being out was massive for this
Mhm.
game. She changes the entire way that Iowa State plays. She changes so much of the rotation, specifically on the perimeter. And with the way that you have to defend Iowa in order to slow them down, where you have no choice but to really pressure the guards and you're running ragged through screens, things like that. That makes a really big difference. And I want to give a lot of credit to Reagan Wilson. She only played 6 minutes, but when she went in, she was up for the challenge. She was solid in there. And then ultimately down the stretch, they really stuck with that core trio of Ariana Jackson, Jada Williams, and Mackenzie Hare. But you got just a little bit of relief
Yep.
there. But it was a game that just lended itself more to those three, but would have lent itself extremely well, I think, just to the strength of Reese Beatty and her ability
Yep.
to get to the rim. And so I think that that's the big thing is both of these teams have specific players that can lead to their improvement as well, just getting them healthy. And
Yep.
that's without even considering all the things that you can develop within this season. But beyond that, did come in fairly healthy. And that definitely is a big boost. It was really nice to see Mackenzie Hare get to play in this game since last year. That was the first game that she missed after making the decision to redshirt and get that hip injury or get that
Yep.
hip surgery. And so it was just cool to see that. And to come up with a couple of huge plays, two of perhaps the biggest in the entire
Hmm.
game, between getting downhill, getting to the rim, and tying the game back up to go into halftime and stopping an 8-0 Hawkeye run at the end of the second quarter. And then that block at the 3-point line as time's ticking down. I thought that was, I mean, it kind of works, you know?
Yeah. And I really thought another huge play that she made was, I think Iowa had crawled within 5. It was 63-58, and she had a baseline drive and got fouled. And
Mhm.
that was at a point where you could tell the momentum was all on the Hawkeye side. Iowa State was struggling to find some answers on the offensive end. And what I think Mackenzie Hare is sneaky good at is attacking the rim. And most of anyone who watches her thinks of her as just a 3-point shooter. She's shooting over for 50% on the year from there, but she can also put the ball on the floor and get to the foul line or finish at the rim. And that is
Mhm.
something that I think this Iowa State team strongly missed last year with her absence, was not only the ability for her to shoot the basketball, but to also put the ball on the floor and attack. And you saw that last night. I mean, she's a kid who's played in a ton of big games and just understands what is needed of her. But before we actually really go into the big three, I also want to give a lot of flowers to Ariana Jackson. I thought the game completely changed in the second half when they made the switch to have her guard Chit Chat Right. And that to me just completely took her out of what she was doing in the first half. I think she had 13 first half points.
Mhm.
And besides a late step back three, was limited to really only 8 in the second half. And that was all because of the defense of Ariana Jackson. And she didn't do a lot of other things on the basketball court, but anyone who knows her and how she plays and what she brings to that team understands the importance of someone who gets her role, no matter what it is, from game to game, but always answers the bell.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that I've heard so much. I mean, I obviously I get to talk to the team. I do the post game, I do all that stuff, and Coach Fenley, every player that we've talked to in post game has been so good about they call out their teammates, and specifically this season, it has been game after game Ariana Jackson that gets that shout out from Coach Fenley, from her teammates, because her role has shifted kind of dramatically because of how much scoring Iowa State has brought in, and the fact that there are just more pieces that are healthy. And so in any given game, yeah, she can knock down four
Yeah,
threes, but that's not something that they're relying on. What they have to rely on is her defense. And she is so willing to do that. I think it's a lot less stressful for her, where she doesn't have to be scoring and defending the opposing team's best player for 40 minutes every single game. There's other really great, capable defenders. There's other great, really capable shooters. And there's just more of that depth of people that can bring in some of that relief. Now, in this game, as we said, a little bit of that depth was gone with Reese out. But I just felt like she did, as you said, just an unbelievable job. Had some really crucial rebounds as well, had 4 of them,
mhm,
had a steal, didn't commit a turnover. And so just to do all that is really important. And what I loved seeing afterward is games like this can get you some good in, the national narrative. It can get you some bad. I saw people that have no affiliation with either team talking about Ariana Jackson.
yep,
And that, first of all, tells you about the knowledge of women's basketball fans and the people that are tuning into these games, because how often are you talking about someone that doesn't score a point, that
yeah,
takes 3 field goals in a game, like, that doesn't have these eye-popping whatever, but they saw it. They saw exactly what you are talking about, is in that second game being able to lock in and just make life difficult, and, takes a charge on one of the
yeah,
first possessions of the game, just has that energy to her. And so, this is a team that you can't take any one piece out and still get the same result. And
right.
that goes for everyone that steps foot on the floor, everyone that's sitting on the bench. And so it was really cool to see some awareness growing of the contributions that players like Ariana Jackson make to this team. And, just kind of going down the line, you talk about Sid Harris recorded her 1,000th career point, got to do it as a Cyclone, the lone senior on this team. Again, not a ton of minutes coming in off the bench in this game, just because of kind of the rhythm, especially in the second half. But
Mhm,
when they were in, they did what they had to do. Sid had 5 points, and at the end of the day, it's a 5-point margin. Like, that matters. And Elisa Williams has worked so, so hard at being able to expand her game. And we saw just a brief couple possessions in the game prior to this of her and Audie on the floor together. And that's something that was noted on the broadcast as I've started my rewatch this morning.
Yep.
And we saw that, and I knew that that was something that Elisa had really wanted to work on because she's so dynamic. She is a great athlete. She's so long, but she can move. The tough thing is always, okay, if you're playing someone slightly quote unquote out of position, maybe you get a mismatch offensively, but how do you defend? The answer for her is she defends
Yep.
beautifully. And so one of the major game changers for Iowa State was being able to put a lineup on the floor that had Audie Crooks, Addie Brown, and Elisa Williams. Because I'm sorry, it is very difficult to guard two of those three well if they are going to be looking to go to the rim or post up. If
Yeah.
you all three of them, you can't match up true to position with them.
No, absolutely not. I thought in that third quarter when they did go big, which I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but that might be the first time
Yes.
that they've done that. And so now you're asking for the Hawkeyes last night was Kylie Feuerbach to go and defend Addie Brown in the post. And no matter which way you want to look at that, that's just a complete mismatch. And they were able to really capitalize on that. And so I think that's something that they're going to continue to look at, because if you can take advantage of having those three players on the floor, I mean, wow, like you said, how do you really go about defending that? And so I thought that was a really nice wrinkle to see from the Cyclones last night, because again, going forward, it's certainly something that they can exploit.
And so we'll get through some of these. We won't dissect every single play, every single player, but the big three for Iowa State: Addie Brown, Audie Crooks, Jada Williams. All three have double doubles. Jada Williams sets yet another career high in assists, which I think she's done in like 4 games or 5 games this year. Like she's set a career high in almost as many as in almost half the games we've played, and is averaging now I think about 7 assists per game, which is more than double her previous career average. Like I'm gonna start with her because I think another kind of underrated. There's a lot of discussion about Iowa State and Audie Crooks, and a lot of it is her dominance in the paint, which is obviously accurate. There's this kind of narrative of, well, when she gets to her spot, you're done for, which is not incorrect. But what I don't see talked about enough is that it's not one specific spot and it's not one specific method of entry, which is usually the limiting factor for post players. And what we see is the ability of Iowa State on the whole to feed the ball inside, primarily coming from Jada Williams and Addie Brown, but it's something that the entire team is very capable of doing. Elisa showed it really well in some of the time that she was in last night in that big lineup. She had 3 assists, didn't have a turnover. And so I think that what kind of flies under the radar is that, yeah, when she gets to her spot, she's unstoppable, but it's not just one specific spot because of the fact that the rest of the team is so good at getting her the ball wherever she may be posting up or however they may have to do that, whether that's a direct feed inside, whether that's a really tough lob that gets dropped on a dime, and then she's able to get around the defender wherever that may be. And so just I think that the dominance kind of overshadows some of the versatility at times where it's not the same exact thing every time, because if she were going down and she were just stepping back into her defender, that would in fact be a foul. That is a foul. That does get called a foul. And that's why we see her getting lobs. That's why we see her stretching out a little bit. And so I feel like just the passing ability top to bottom, but especially Jada Williams, I mean, she has put in the work, and was it necessary?
Right. Yeah, and I think what is like, and if you're looking from an outsider, it might be like, well, yeah, she's throwing the ball to Audie Crooks, but like you said, it's from all different angles. The defense, you have to remember, you're trying to guard one of the best post players, so that always looks different every time down the court. It could be a front, it could be major backside help. It always looks different if you're the offensive player trying to throw that ball. So you have to be a really good passer in order to get those balls into Audie Crooks. And that's what I think sometimes is taken for granted for a player like Jada Williams, who is able to do that, is to really put the ball where it needs to be most every time down the court for this team. But I also think just she gives this team a little bit of an edge and a spark, and the way she plays the game is something that they haven't had for a very long time there. And I know someone referenced this last night on my timeline about her being like a kid Blakowski. And you know
Yes.
what? And I'm sure you saw that. But for any of those Cyclone fans out there, that is a very good, accurate description, I would say. But she's just someone who just exudes a joy for playing the game, and just a passion, and the way she plays it is just very different from anything we've really seen. And she's more dynamic, I think. And
Mm-hmm.
so I've talked about it a lot, just the addition of her. But I think, again, a lot of what she does goes a little bit underrated, because you have to be really good at those things to get those numbers. It's not like you're just throwing the ball in and it's easy catch and shoot. I mean, that's a hard pass every time down the court. And so, kudos to Jada Williams, because I think she's fit in really seamlessly with this team.
Yeah, I mean, this is a tremendous team all around in Iowa, and especially on the defensive end. This is far and away the best team that Iowa State has seen this season. And so
Mhm.
to be able to not just match but exceed what she's done previously, it's like, okay, that's the proof is there. Like, this is not a fluke. This is not a one-off thing. This isn't about the competition. This is about the work they've put in. And so, I mean, going just down to Addie Brown, played nearly the entire game and produced for it. Went 7 of 11 from the floor, had 20 points, had 12 rebounds, 5 assists. Did, as we've kind of come to expect, a little bit of everything. I thought that she's continued to be really, really good with her shot selection. She's shooting threes when they're there, and getting great screens to do so as well. But she's gotten, I think, a lot better at finding her opportunities to drive to the rim. That's been something that's kind of been a conversation over the past few years, is just continuing to kind of build up not even her confidence, but like the awareness of how necessary it is for her to be aggressive. And I said pregame last night that so far this season, she hasn't been like a massive, massive scorer. She's been absurdly efficient, but like they haven't needed her to be a big scorer. It seemed like last night was probably the first time where they needed her to really
Mhm.
be a significant scoring threat, and she was 100% prepared to do so.
Yeah, I think there's always that fine line, right? The patience or the aggressiveness. But I would say that's a major area of growth I've seen from Addie Brown this year, is just not forcing. She's
Mhm.
taking what the defense is giving her. And I think when you mentioned the efficiency, that's the number one reason, is she's being really smart on the offensive end in terms of when to take shots, when to catch and shoot, when to attack off the bounce. And we already know she's a great passer. And I've said this so many times on this podcast about her being the X factor for this team, and I mentioned it on Tuesday. And it's, if she stays on the court and is not in foul trouble, this makes them an elite team because of everything that she brings to the table when she's on the basketball court. Because it's not just her scoring, it's not just her passing, it's not just her rebounding. She literally affects every part of the game for that Cyclone team. And so I think, again, it's easy that all the credibility and all this stuff goes to Audie Crooks, and the attention. But Addie Brown is really that piece that makes this team go, because of what she can do on both ends of the court.
Absolutely. And so we'll kind of, save the headline here for last, with Audie Crooks. Another 30-point game. Third straight 30-point game. The first player since Brittany Griner to do so, shooting 65% or more. And first of all, wow. Like, you keep finding these little tidbits. Like, someone will throw a couple things out after every game and you're like, all right, sure. Yeah. Like, why not?
Yeah.
Like, just another one to add to the list there. But played a career high in minutes by a couple of seconds, went 36 minutes and 3 seconds, I think, or 6 seconds. And but really played the entirety of the second half, and got what needed to be done. Had 7 offensive rebounds, just 7 of the team's 9, and a couple of them off her own misses, several of them off of other players' misses, just able to get them a lot of really great extra opportunities. Stayed super efficient, a little bit under her season average, of course, but 65%, you will take that, especially again against a team like Iowa. I saw, again, this is like so nitpicky, but I'm, if nothing, I'm nothing if not nitpicky. And so
Mhm.
I saw some comments of like, dang, Audie Crooks puts the Iowa State team on her back. And I was like, I understand what you're trying to say as far as like what she does, but that's not truly what happens, because that really diminishes what everyone else is doing. What she does is she elevates everyone around
Yep.
her. And so you have, like, first of all, as she will say constantly, she doesn't do anything without people getting her the ball, without people putting her in positions to be successful. And everyone else kind of lives up to that opportunity. And so you also have shooters that make it so that you can't just send 3 people at her. Teams have tried that.
Yep.
Teams have absolutely tried that, but you have enough ability around her, either as threats or as actual execution, that she is not the sole threat on the team. And so, but I do think that she also gives people the ability to do what they do really well. It means that Ariana Jackson can really focus on defense, because although it's great to get her some shots, they're going to be able to find other people to shoot if she needs
Yep.
to take a breather for an offensive possession.
Mhm.
And what a luxury that is, to have that as an option, where most people are like, "Oh, well, you don't have to guard that player, like they're not going to do anything." And so maybe they'll send a double somewhere else. This is, well, if you don't guard her, like she's probably gonna score, but you
Yep.
also probably want to double. Like, it just makes things really difficult. And so I thought that her effort was obviously terrific. Maintained really good composure down the stretch. Rough free throw shooting day, top to bottom. I
Yep.
think a lot of that, just the intensity, and also the up and down nature of the game, but also a slow paced game. Like, kind of
Yeah.
weird in that way, where you could get really stuck in the half court, but then you'd be running up and down for 2 minutes straight. But even with that, I felt like, she made that the free throw to put them back up, multiple possessions when it really counted. And then the other thing that, I try not to address too much chat or whatever, people like to talk about her defense and say that, well, if anything, you just run her up and down and she's a defensive liability. But first of all, anyone gets tired after playing 36 minutes, but even
Yep.
so, she showed that she is extremely capable of stretching out her range. She was able to guard Hannah Stokey effectively from the high post several times. Stokey scored some because
Yep.
she's a great player. She was also on Team USA. And then she got blocked. She got stopped. And so I just felt like a very complete game in a lot of ways, in a time where it was really necessary, and just a great way to be able to show people, yep, this is not a one-off, this is not a fluke, and doing it with a smile on her face, because what else is she going to do?
Yeah, and I think that's the best part about when you watch Audie, is just she plays the game with such a happiness and a love for it. But you also mentioned, like, it's not just one spot, and I think anyone who's watched her from her freshman year on is just the growth and development you've seen, and what she's added to her repertoire in terms of moves around the basket. She's finishing more with her left hand.
Mhm.
She's added that little fadeaway, which, if anyone watches that in real time, you just shake your head, and then you're like, well, how do you guard her?
The
Because
post I
if
saw yesterday was, is that Audie or Asia? And I about yelled out loud. I was like, I mean,
right.
what else can you do? Like, if you're being compared to the signature move of the best player in the world, like,
Hmm. But it's like, it's tough because you watch that and it's like, okay, I mean, if you're respecting that, it's like there's just not a lot you can do. But I think, and it was mentioned a couple times on the broadcast, she has probably some of the best hands I've ever seen from a big, in terms of like most anything you throw in her vicinity, she can catch. And a really funny story, Kristen was actually Audie's first offer, and she called me after she watched her in a game. Like, I mean, Audie was so young, and
Yeah.
but she's like, I've never seen a kid with hands that can catch like anything in the vicinity. And what's funny is that's like really held true
Yeah.
throughout her entire growth and career, is that I think that's one thing as a post player she doesn't get enough credit for, because she's catching those balls in traffic and so many
Mhm.
bodies are in there, and 9 times out of 10 that's secured by her. And so I think if you're watching, and you can't do enough things, I think, as a post player, sometimes you're just gifted that ability, but in terms of just working on being able to just be that magnet for the basketball is incredible. Because if you have a guard playing with you and that guard knows, hey, I'm going to throw this ball and I know my big is going to get it the majority of the time, what confidence does that give you as players that surround her? But I just think there's not enough ways to describe the way she's playing this season. I mean, she's just been really unbelievable in terms of her production. But I also think it is on the other end of the basketball court too. It's not just her offensive game. I think she's working harder than she ever has on the other end, and that's really helped this team too. And so I think sometimes you can get caught up in that, where, oh, she just scores, but it's really the whole picture with her.
Mhm.
And I just think you're seeing that maturation, really happen before your eyes, because she is becoming that more of a complete player for this team.
And kind of the last point I'll have on this particular game before we do a quick look ahead to what the two teams have coming is that late in the second half, there was a point where Jada threw a lob really like early in the possession into
Hmm.
Audie that went a little bit long and it ended up being a turnover. And of course, this is on the end in front of the Iowa State bench, which is directly in front of where I am. And Coach Venn, I think, was getting on Jada a little bit for going so early or for the pass. And Audie's the one coming up on that sideline in front. And she turns to him and she goes, "That's on me. That's on me." Like,
Hmm.
this team, like, they have each other's backs, like, to the point that in game they will turn around and be like, "That's
Yeah.
not her. Like, that's me." And just own it and move on. And like, I think that's also what you see defensively is that what Addie said post game last night is she feels like what's gotten light years better is their communication. And it's the communication and also just that genuine desire to help each other out. Where, like, if it's a scramble situation, if it's something that's not exactly what's in your game plan or in your strategy, they're gonna do literally everything in their power to help their teammates out because they do, yes, they want to win the game, but maybe just as much because they want to help each other in that moment. And so I think that
Absolutely.
that's what you see from the best teams with the best chemistry, and that's the kind of thing that really can elevate you. And so that particular interaction just kind of made me laugh because I was like, you're running back on defense and you're turning around and telling your coach like,
Yeah.
"Hey, don't yell at her. Like, that's
Yeah.
my fault."
Yeah, you gotta love that too if you're a guard, because you're saying, I know that's going in my stat line, but hey,
Yep.
she's taking accountability for it.
It definitely, I think that it just is another reason why it's very easy to uh understand why players want to play alongside Audie. And
Absolutely.
it's fun to watch. So looking ahead here, a couple of really interesting matchups coming up for Iowa, which I think that the one that's going to be overlooked is Lindenwood this weekend, and that's that's fair insofar as after that is UConn,
Yep.
and so that's going to be really big. But uh, Lindenwood is one of the best mid-major teams that you'll see, period. The second best mid-major team that Iowa will face this year after Fairfield. And so it's not a team that I think Iowa should really be worried about, but it's not a game that you could sleepwalk into. And in the same way for Iowa State with UNI coming up this weekend, that's certainly not a game you could sleepwalk into. So I think that for Iowa, obviously, yeah, you've got to go. It would be great if they can get some of just their deeper into the rotation players, because this is also a Saturday game, not Sunday, and so they have a pretty quick turnaround with,
Mhm.
as has been noted, still working some players back into the rotation. I based on nothing but my own assumptions, feel like it would be probably beneficial to rein right back a little bit in her minutes, just so that you can give her that week to get herself back to feeling or as close to 100% healthy as possible against
Mhm.
UConn. And so I think that we should see some pretty significant rotation from Iowa, just to hopefully build everyone's confidence before they have a major challenge, which we'll obviously talk about next week, in UConn.
Yeah, I think that Saturday game against Lindenwood will be great for them in terms of trying to get more players in the rotation. But that's also a Lindenwood team that went down to Baylor. They got down really big early, but then I think that game only ended up maybe 13 points. And
Mhm.
Iowa, faced Baylor earlier this season. So certainly I don't think that's a game they're going to take lightly, just because you're also at the point now in your non-conference season where conference is right around the corner. And so you want to be starting to play, as good a basketball as you can, because like we referenced earlier, those are the games that really matter, because like you said, there isn't a non-conference champion. Whatever you did in the non-conference, it's done and over with. You learn, you grow. Now when these games are coming up, you want to make sure you're playing your, really good basketball. And so I think they've certainly been, in situations where not to overlook opponents. They know, I think in both of these programs understand how good mid majors can be, because they face them both in Drake and UNI every single year. And they've also been beaten by them. And so I think that's a point where they know they can't overlook these teams, because they understand how good they can be. And so I expect this Iowa team to come out and understand that on Saturday. But it will certainly pose a challenge for them before they do go into that UConn game.
And then on the other side here for Iowa State, we aren't going to get into all the preview of Iowa and UConn. We've got all next week for that,
Yep.
so we'll save that. But for Iowa State, they've got a UNI team coming in, which, as we repeat constantly, in-state matchups in Iowa are built different. This is a UNI team that is absurdly well coached and is better than their record would indicate. They're coming off of a really tough season as far as injuries go, and then losing one of your best players in school history to graduation in Maya McDermott, and so just some turnover in the team, and just adjusting to new roles. But they've had really competitive games against really good teams, especially a tough start to the year, losing three straight to North Dakota State, St. Louis, and Iowa. But then they beat Creighton. They were able to beat Illinois State, who obviously, as we know, like is a very capable team. And you've seen that matchup. And so the big thing to me is the close losses to UNLV and South Dakota State. Like 6-point loss to UNLV, 2-point loss last night to South Dakota State, which I'm super excited. I'm finishing my rewatch of Cyhawk and I'm flipping the page. I'm watching that game immediately after, because that that caught my attention. I already knew UNI was better than the record, but that tells me they have learned. They have learned a lot already
Yeah.
this week.
Well, and let's not forget, it's a UNI team that beat this Iowa State team last year,
Right.
and so I think that will be on the minds of a lot of those Cyclone players, in understanding. And now you're right; it is a completely different team. They had a ton of graduation losses, but it's an in-state game. They are very well coached, and I think the really thing that kind of goes. Not talked about enough about Tanya Warren is she's always willing to try something kind of unique and different. And so expect the unexpected from this
Mhm.
Panther team. You're probably going to get some quirky defense or something that, she feels is going to give them the best opportunity to stay in this game. And I don't think they're always a team that's never scared. They'll walk in, they'll be confident. And so it will be a game where I think UNI will try to do some different things, but they struggle to score the ball more than anything this year. And so you're going against a pretty potent Iowa State team. And so I think it's probably a good thing for this Iowa State team that so many of them were there last year and do remember that, because if not, I could see that kind of being a little bit of a trap. But I would expect the Cyclones to be reminded probably several times over the next couple of days about last year's loss, and be fully prepared for that game on Sunday.
And that's a good point as far as just their offense. Certainly they've had some struggles. Like they have plenty of people that are capable of scoring, but they just haven't scored in bunches. And you know what? That's going to happen when Maya McDermott graduates. Yeah. And all of a sudden everyone is looking around like, oh shoot, I'm in a very different role now. And so, you know, they've had people ready to step up. Elise Yeager really came on the scene last year and was way more capable than I think anyone would have anticipated as a freshman, especially being thrust into the position she was when Grace Buffelli got injured. And so I'm really excited to see what she's got in her bag for this year. She's playing the most minutes on the team, just under 34 per game. She also shoots 36% from three on just under 3 attempts per game. And so you talk about things that people throw out there as potential counters for Audie Crooks, and having someone that can stretch to the perimeter is an idea that certainly gains a lot of traction. And so I'm very excited to see that matchup. Riley Goebel also flies under the radar just because there's been obviously just some struggles for UNI early this season. She doesn't have any one eye-popping number, but in kind of the same way that Addie Brown does it, she just does so many things for this team. Like, she is the engine. She's averaging a team high 11 points per game. She's shooting over 50% from the floor. She's averaging 8 rebounds per game. And, oh, by the way, over 2 steals and 2 blocks. Like, that to me is the really impressive thing, that she just is everywhere. For Iowa State, the big question last night was, okay, the offense is the offense. Like, I had full confidence that they were going to score. I wanted to see the proof of defense against a very, very good offense, and we saw it. It was not flawless, but the proof is there that their defense is vastly improved. And so now it's about, you've done it against an elite team. Can you do it against a team that maybe struggles some on the offensive end? And can you really lock them down and give yourself some room to work? So it'll be very fun. It'll be a really exciting game. It's a doubleheader day in Hilton, so I'm looking forward to it. But now, more than anything, I'm just looking forward to not having to worry about the Cyhawk Chattered women's basketball anymore. We could all just go back to saying, like, dang, those are some really good women's basketball teams here in our state, and moving on and saying, man, let's hope that they're just running laps around their respective conferences.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest takeaway, is no matter which team you were cheering for last night, is you have 2 really great teams going forward that are going to give us really exciting seasons. And so I think if you're from the state of Iowa, you're obviously very, very proud of both of those programs. And certainly there is really a lot more great basketball to come from both of them.
Oh, Brittany, what a week. And
I know.
Thursday. I know.
It's like they knew we were going to be able to talk about the Cyhawk today.
Jamie. I know. They teed it up so beautifully. And like, especially, I tweeted this morning that, like, I did myself a really great solid in advance. I was supposed to have my last test of the semester as a student today. I immediately moved it. I went to my professor. I'm like, hey, can I take it on Tuesday? He looked at me. He's like, oh, you're really confident. I'm like,
yeah.
Yes, but also I'm not confident in my ability on that Thursday.
Absolutely. I love it. But it's just, I think everyone from the state knows how much the Cyhawk means, no matter what sport. And so I think it's just really fun to be involved in it, not only as a fan, but obviously for us, we have personal interest in it and as well. So it's just a really fun week. And anytime those 2 teams play, no matter what sport, it's always fun and a playful banter.
Exactly. Yeah. I'll take any playful banter. The other stuff is like, I can.
Yeah. You just keep scrolling or ignore.
I'm filtering it out.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. Well, Brittany, there's no one I would have chosen to do this episode with. No one else. I will give a quick shout out though to Chelsea Late up north, who was ensuring that the entire country of Canada knew that the game was on TSN.
I love it.
And then for anyone not watching, she was at regular intervals telling them to tune in and updating them, as well as soon as the broadcast started, text me to ask what color I was wearing because she was pretty sure she saw me on the sideline but wanted to confirm. So God bless.
That's how we grow the game, right?
Exactly. I said the Canadian Cyclone pipeline is very real. It continues. So
Perfect.
We love to see it. Been a really fun stretch here in Ames. So folks, you can find Brittany Carper on your social media platforms at Brittany Carper. You can find me at JStyes. And most importantly, perhaps, you can find a roundup of all of our content here at Her Hoop Stats. We are at Her Hoop Stats on whatever social media platforms you're on. We've got herhoopstats.com where we've got the most analytics you're going to find nearly anywhere. We've added a lot to our search functions, which is awesome. I'm loving that. We've got year over year differentials leaderboards. I'm kind of obsessed with that function. I'm going to be diving in a little bit with some time off next week, but I definitely encourage you, if you have looked at the site previously, haven't yet this season, check out what's new. If you're trying to get just a little bit of a better understanding of the game, we've got a bunch of tools for you. We also have a ton of content. We have a bunch of really, really great writers, in addition to, of course, our daily podcast during the week, which we will have an episode coming at you tomorrow and every day next week, as you have come to expect, like clockwork. So for today, folks, alongside Brittany Carper, I'm Jamie Steyer Johnson. Thanks so much for checking in with us, and we'll talk to you next time.